Hello and welcome to August's book review, and to a month that had both my favourite book of the year and my least favourite book of the year in it, and a few that are, somewhere in between. For the first part of this video, I don't have the physical books with me, for various reasons, largely because I read them on a Kindle, but I will put a picture here so you can see what I'm talking about. And the first of those books is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Now, this is a book that I was quite excited to read. I thought the premise of a group of old people looking into cold cases in their retirement village and their retirement was quite interesting, and then obviously when there's a murder in their retirement village they then go about trying to solve it. I thought that as a concept was really interesting. I was also really intrigued to know what Richard Osman would be like as an author, because I'm a big House of Games fan. I like a bit of Pointless. Essentially I like his quiz shows, but what would he be like as a fiction writer? Now, this book wasn't quite what I was expecting, and I don't really know how to explain that. But yeah, it wasn't 100% what I thought it was going to be, but nonetheless I enjoyed it, and Joyce is the best character in the world, and some of the things she said I felt really seen. There was a bit where she was explaining, or someone was explaining, that although everybody knows her and likes her, she's quite invisible, and people underestimate her, and that is basically what has followed me through my entire life. So me and Joyce, we are kin, we are from the same cloth. And yeah, I could see this book being made as a film. It's one of those books that you read it going, this is going to be a film one day. There were lots of twists and turns in it, but it could take you chapters until you actually understood why that bit happened or how that twist or turn took place. And the ending was left on a big old cliffhanger, because obviously he was already planning or maybe even writing or expecting a sequel to it. And I'm never a big fan of that. I would prefer that you finish the book so it can be read as a standalone, and then you start the next one, even if it's a continuation, just so that you're not tied into buying all of them, I guess. I know that defeats the object of the publishing industry, and the whole point of a cliffhanger ending is so people buy more books. But it's not my favourite thing for authors to do. I hadn't actually seen many people talk about it, so I did go into it relatively blind in terms of reviews. The only one I'd seen was someone saying that they didn't get on with the writing style, and I can kind of understand it because it does jump all over the place. You jump from characters, you jump past and present, and you do jump around quite a lot. So I can understand where that comment was made. But I enjoyed it. I would like to read the sequel, mainly for Joyce, it has to be said. And yeah, that was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. So then the second book I read was Educated by Tara Westover. Now this is following on from last month's memoir. I thought I'd read another one. And this is obviously Tara's life. She's brought up in, I think it's Idaho, and her family are they known as survivalists? Is that what they're called? But people that stockpile for the end of the world. They believe the world's going to end and there's going to be this like apocalypse, and only they're prepared for it. They also, or at least her dad had, a lot of views on the Illuminati, and if you're involved with certain things like school or going to a hospital, sort of health things, then they've got you and all of that kind of stuff. So it follows her life and her urge to become educated, essentially. And at the beginning, obviously, you're largely in her childhood. She's the youngest, so she doesn't really know anything different. She has older siblings who had gone to school and had seen life outside of their farm a bit more than Tara had. But I actually found this book was just essentially a list of all the horrific accidents and illnesses that they got that they didn't get treated by professionals, such as like car crashes. Like her brother got burnt, and they just treated it at home. Her mother is a herbalist and believes in all of that chakra stuff. And I also got the impression that the family just sort of went along with the dad's views rather than actually believing it themselves, which I guess didn't sit very well with me. But then if I was in their position, would I go against all of that when I know that it's going to cause a load of aggro? It's touched upon, but it's likely that the dad has some sort of mental health issue. As I say, Tara has theories, but obviously he won't go to a doctor, so it's never diagnosed and things like that. And then the second part of the book follows her going into education to different colleges. She ends up in Cambridge, and how it's just a complete unknown to her and she's an alien in these situations. And I kind of preferred those bits. I preferred the bits where she learnt about a huge event that everyone else knows about, such as the Holocaust, for example, and then she does like a big deep dive into trying to learn everything about it and is shocked about how much she doesn't know and that kind of stuff. I prefer those bits, but they're few and far between in the book. It, as I say, it's largely a list of accidents that she and the family have. So I wasn't overly keen on it, but it was an interesting read nonetheless. And that was Educated by Tara Westover. And then the third book I read is the classic of the month, and my brother Adam asked me what was I classing as a classic, and basically it's however many years ago when I downloaded for free a ton of books from Amazon that they've classed as Amazon classics. And this is one of those, and that's Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. I decided to go with this one this month because A, it's short at just over like 200 pages, and it is also written by a Scottish author, and at the time I was in Edinburgh. If you haven't seen those videos, I'll link the playlist up here for you, although I think only one will have come out, but there's a few more coming. Anyway, digressing there. Treasure Island. This is the worst book I've read this year. I really didn't enjoy it. I was going into it expecting a, pirate adventure and all of that kind of stuff. Granted, my main reference point for Treasure Island is the Muppets film, so maybe that's why I didn't get what I was hoping for. I did get, some pirate talk, a bit of Shiver Me Timbers, Pieces of Eight, all of that, but that's about it. I found it really boring, and although it's a short book, I found it quite a slog to get through, as it just didn't hold my attention at all. I feel like Robert Louis Stevenson describes things like the boat far too much, and then the actual action bits he goes, and then they had a fight, and that's it. And you're like, well, I didn't want the 25 pages explaining the weather and how the storm did X, Y and Z. I would have preferred the bit about the fight, thank you, the bit about the people. So yeah, not my favourite. Obviously, as I've said in a couple of these, there are some questionable references in it, and this is no different. There are some bits about race that some may find uncomfortable, but on the whole I wouldn't recommend reading anyway because I just think it's really dull. So apologies to any Treasure Island fans out there, but it just wasn't for me. So it's Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. We now come to a book that I can actually hold up, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I have read one other Matt Haig book before, which was where is he on my bookshelf? On the one that I can't see. The Last Family in England, which is all about, it's all written from the dog's perspective and stuff. I think I have a book review where I talk about that one, so I'll link that up here. So I was quite excited about getting into The Midnight Library. I've heard wonderful things about it across many platforms, and I really like Matt Haig's writing, and again, it's a relatively short book, which we like. We've had a few chunky ones recently, so we're liking the slightly shorter books. So this follows Nora. She's going through a tough time and decides to commit suicide, and then she gets taken to the Midnight Library, where she then gets to experience life if she'd made different decisions, which as a concept I really like because it's something I often think about. For example, the night that I met Pete, I didn't want to go out. but I went out because I felt bad that I didn't go out with my friends the night before, and she wasn't having a great time of it. But should I have stuck to my guns and stuck with what I felt, then I wouldn't have gone out that night and I wouldn't have met Pete, and where would my life be now? So to have a book that basically explores those things is just really fascinating to me. Should I be holding it this side? We'll hold it this side, I think there's more space. So I did go into it with kind of high hopes and high expectations, and it was a good book, but it got a bit repetitive, as you can probably imagine, because she's just going in and out of different lives to find one that suits her best. So it was really good and I really enjoyed it, and it probably could have been a 5-star read if it wasn't quite so predictable and it wasn't quite so repetitive. As I said, I really like Matt Haig's writing, and it was super easy to read, and I really like the characters in it, and there's a lot of ties with philosophy and mental health in it, and it's all going so well, but it just got a bit much, and I don't think he could have got away with making the book any shorter lengthwise, but I feel like he could have taken out some of the lives that she visited, just because, as I said, it got really predictable and really repetitive. But as I say, on the whole, I did really enjoy it, and it is a concept that I'm really interested in, and one that, if anyone knows of any other books similar where it's what happened if you made a separate choice, please let me know, because I would be intrigued to read more, because that part of it I was really into. That's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And then the last book I read, I also had incredibly high hopes for. It's a book I've wanted to read for probably about a year since I first heard about it, but I've been waiting for it to come out in paperback, and that is The Shelf by Helly, Acton. This follows Amy. She thinks that she's going to be proposed to. She feels like her life is going to go down that path, and then she gets taken to an unknown location and dumped on TV, and then ends up on a reality TV show called The Shelf, where 7 women, I can't remember, compete to be the keeper. And in that it means they get a monetary prize and blah 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 blah. But essentially it's a reality TV show to try and make them into marriage material. And I absolutely loved this book. It exceeded my expectations and is the best book I've read this year so far, and I could rave about it for a very long time, so I'll try and keep this concise. So as I say, it's based on sort of that reality TV concept, a bit like Big Brother, which means that it is so addictive. Like with those, you just want to watch the next episode. I just wanted to read the next chapter and find out where it was going, and with that it was also a really easy and quick read, despite the 416 pages. Some of the tasks and things that they had to do, wow, the misogynistic nature of it all was so frustrating but so compelling all at the same time. I know that was the whole point of it. It wasn't a mistake that she's included all of those kind of elements into it, but it did both anger me, but because the characters in the game show were also calling it out, although I have read reviews where people say they don't do that enough, but each to their own. I personally really liked it, how they questioned everything they were doing and fought back to what they thought was incorrect and things like that. The men in this are not portrayed well. Granted, they're all men that have dumped their wives, girlfriends, fiancés, whatever on TV for a game show. And it's a lot of that thing of not liking what a woman's doing, so then she's a psycho and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought this was so cleverly written. It's a concept I've never come across before, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I ended up going into the works in Bath. It was something like this. It called me. We'd gone into all these charity shops in Bath and I couldn't find anything. I wanted to buy a book because I'm obsessed, as we all know. And then we walked past the works and I was like, something in there is calling me. And it was this book because it was £2 and it's the best £2 I've spent this year. I highly, highly recommend reading The Shelf by Helly, Acton. And that's everything I read this month. As you can see, there were some highs and some lows, but a thoroughly good reading month nonetheless. So if you've read any of the books I've spoken about, or you have any recommendations for me, as always, please put those in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you want to, please go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!